The Illusionist Interrogations with the TravisTy starring Bruce Gold.
Hello and welcome to the Illusionist Interrogation Podcast. I am the TravisTy, and today we're going to be learning a bit about our next guest. He's a magic consultant, director, writer, actor, performer, comedian, and magician. He's been performing for over 30 years and has his own talk show, The Bruce Gold Show. Please welcome to the show, Bruce Gold.
And the crowd goes wild.
I'll bump the volume up. So, Bruce, how's it going?
Going well. How about yourself?
Great. Have you been doing very many Zoom shows?
I've been doing a few. You know, it's funny, though. The marketplace has really changed. And a lot of people are doing Zoom out of necessity. And it's like a whole new landscape for them because, I was a kind of a parlor stand-up comedy kind of performer. And, on Zoom, you can't hand anybody anything. So the act doesn't transfer one-to-one from the live space to the virtual space. So it's been a big adjustment. But I'll tell you who has a huge advantage is kids who've been doing YouTube stuff their whole lives. So they're used to shooting at a desk or in their bedroom or wherever they happen to be. So it's leveled the playing field to a large degree because everybody is kind of confined by what they're able to do on screen as opposed to in gigantic theaters.
Okay. So we're going to start this thing off by going back in time. We're going to rewind all the way to your childhood. How did you get into magic?
It's such a familiar story. I got a magic set when I was in second grade. I actually had appendicitis attack and I was in elementary school and my stomach hurt real bad. And then finally they figured out we should get this kid to a hospital. And thank God, because had they waited another hour or two, I likely might not have made it. So while I was in the hospital, somebody said, is there anything we can bring you? And I thought, oh, this is a golden opportunity. I get to ask for something I want. Yes, I want a magic kit. And so they got me a magic set. But that's kind of how many magicians get started. And then if you were like me, you open up the box and you're like, expected it to be filled with miracles. And then what did you find? Instructions. And that's kind of that's everybody's first lesson, right? That magic isn't a power, it's a skill.
Do you remember when your first show was?
Years ago, there was a very popular program let me rephrase. So years ago, Muscular Dystrophy Association put out a program where you could do backyard carnivals to raise money. And so it became popular with kids like myself who had some skill that they could perform. And so that's what I did. Those were some of my very first shows, those backyard carnivals.
Do you remember what you performed?
Oh my gosh. I some of my early tricks like the appearing cane, I think that was my opener. When I got started, there was a kiosk in my local mall in South Florida called Paul Diamond's Magic and Fun Wagon. Now, Paul wasn't there. There were other demonstrators, but I used to go to the mall on the weekends sometimes. My parents would drop me off and I'd spend a couple hours just staring in the windows of that kiosk, dreaming about all these wonderful tricks I was going to buy that would make people so delighted with me as a performer. And one of them was the appearing cane. And I thought, now that is a professional prop. And it was $16. And I saved up my allowance and I bought the appearing cane. And I also had the Professor's Nightmare. That was one of my early tricks. There was Topsy-Turvy Bottles. That was an early one. Die Box. These are all great classics of magic that really you can add your own style to, or you can display your lack of style while you make that process of discovery to figure out who you are as a performer. So, so many of the people, people say, what do you do? And sometimes I go, oh, well, I talk for a living because I do stand-up comedy and also comedy magic, a lot of talking. But a lot of people who are like talk show hosts going all the way back to like Dick Cavett and Johnny Carson and Arsenio Hall and they have a great affection for magic, and they started as kids doing that. Some of the biggest film directors in the world, J.J. Abrams, loves magic, started as a magician. I have a friend who's also a director who's very big and now kind of like a new director, making kind of a big splash and in the horror genre. And he was on my show, The Bruce Gold Show, which is available on Facebook. I think I've got like 12 episodes there.
I'll link
But
it
he
down
actually, but he actually told a great story on an episode. Jerome Sable is his name, and he told a great story on the episode about how when he started in magic, he was so young that like when people would call to hire him, he'd have his brother answer, because otherwise it was like, yes, I'd love to come entertain. You know, he's just a little kid with a high voice. And so that was kind of an amusing story. But, you know, magic is such a wonderful way for kids to relate to their peers. Now, I am now, as of this airing, roughly 6'3.5". As I age, apparently they say I'm going to shrink a little bit, as people do, but I'm 6'3.5", so almost 6'4". And when I was young, I kind of shot up like a weed when I was growing, and my knees were not altogether reliable, and that meant that I wasn't great at sports, and I was kind of a pudgy, out of shape kid. And so I was last to be picked for any of the sports teams. And when you're in school, sports are like such a big way that your peers value who you are. At least it was when I was a kid. And that was way before the internet age, you know. People were book smart maybe. But now everybody, you know, through gaming and through the internet and through YouTube, you can really relate to your peers. But as a kid, magic was my way to relate to my peers and find a way to feel empowered. So, and it's still that way today. You know, it's such a great way for kids to learn to speak in front of their peers. Gosh, YouTube, as we're talking, I'm just kind of thinking to myself, wow, how different it is when I was a kid because of the format of YouTube, and how encouraging it is for people to relate to their peers and to find community in whatever specific thing that they like. And wow, what an explosion of magic on the internet, right? Yeah. Because when I was a kid, it was library books and books from the magic shop, and now there's so much content for kids to learn from. That's why I think that kids today are like these monsters with cardistry and things, because rather than, you know, having to read moves out of a book, they're seeing them on their screen, and it's that visual way of learning is so important. There are two sides to that coin. Are one, seeing something visually, you can learn it in a much more expedient fashion. However, imitation is the other side of that coin, where people end up just imitating what they see rather than developing themselves. Or because when we were reading out of books, we weren't really seeing the other performers, so we weren't mirroring and copying exactly what they do and exactly the way they do it. So I think that's the thing that you have to watch out for as a young performer, or not watch out for, but it's a process of discovery that you make when you're starting in magic. And I just think that's something to consider. Am I doing this like me, or am I doing it like somebody else that is not me and not anything like me? So, you know, we all grow and develop.
So just going off that, do you think that kids nowadays are more skilled overall? Or do you think they are just copying more people? And
no, I think they're much more skilled. I think that they're evolutionist magicians because of the amount of content they're exposed to is exponentially larger than when I was a kid. And so their knowledge of magic and the pool of knowledge from which they draw, much larger than when I was a kid. When I was a kid, you know, David Copperfield had a special, Doug Henning had a special, HBO had a magic special, and these things aired maybe a few times a year. Now, every single day, you can turn on your internet connection and go to YouTube and see all of those specials and hundreds more from every country.
But you also have to think, you had better people to look up to, I think.
Yeah, well, let's just say when the pool of performers grew, it grew at every level.
Yeah.
So there's exposure to fantastic performers and mediocre performers. So you develop a kind of vocabulary of magic, and you learn who's good and who isn't, or whose work is admirable and whose work is just out there to be out there.
How long did it take from your first show to another show that maybe you realized, all right, magic's for me, this is my career?
Well, after I had done those backyard carnivals for a while, I started getting hired to do some birthday parties, and I got paid $30 to do a 30-minute show. And in my young estimation, in my head, I was like, wait a minute, $1 a minute? This is genius. This is what I'm going to do. So that was a big attraction. At that age, you're not thinking about, does this have a retirement plan? Do they have IRA matching? And if you've never heard about what an IRA is, I encourage you to look into that. It has nothing to do with magic, but everything to do with prosperity. The magic of compound interest. I got started with my IRA a little late, but fortunately I had done some work in television and had like a windfall of cash, and then I was able to invest in an IRA. So if I give you valuable advice today, that might be the most valuable thing you hear. Start your IRA as soon as possible and just continue to contribute. You'll thank me when you're 65.
Okay, so because I know you're a comedian, magician, and a handful of other things, what is your favorite type of place to perform? What's your favorite type of crowd?
Yeah, it's funny because the common joke is, oh, you're an actor, a writer, a magician, a consultant, a comedian, a television host. And the joke is, when I'm out of work in 7 different careers. But I just have a lot of interests. And I think one of the great gifts of entertainment is for me personally, is being able to do many different things. So I think your question was like, what is my favorite? And my 2 favorite things are, one is to do the television hosting stuff, because when I was a kid, I used to watch Johnny Carson. Like, I had a little tiny 12-inch black and white TV. Yes, TVs used to be in black and white. I'm that old. I'm older than I look, I guess. But I had a little 12-inch television, and it was right next to my bed. I'd drag it over on a chair, and I'd turn the volume down really low, because I was supposed to be getting a good night's sleep to get ready for school the next day. But I was watching Johnny Carson, and to me, that just seemed like the best job in the world. And then I moved out here, and I did some television, and then I got a producer interested in doing The Bruce Gold Show, which was like kind of a lower budget Tonight Show that Johnny Carson did, but same kind of format. I had the desk, I had the background with the city, I had guests on, and it's just such a big thrill for me. But as a live performer, doing parlor-style magic, where maybe you have 100, well, anywhere from a dozen to 100 or a couple hundred people in the room. I love that kind of performing, because I feel like it really allows me to connect, and there's an immediacy to it, and everybody has a good view with a crowd that size. But as a stand-up comedian, I once opened for Kenny G at Bob Carr Stadium in Orlando, and this was at the height of his career, and there were 3,000 people in the audience. I had never done, I think 300 was my biggest show up to that point. So now there were 3,000 people, and I came out, and when I got that first laugh, it really like almost knocked me over, because it hit me like an ocean wave. Because I was used to being in a smaller venue where the laugh was like, ha 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 ha. And if there was a little roll to it, it might be ha 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 ha, a couple seconds. But because there were that many people, the laugh went like an ocean wave. It was like, ah, and then it crested, wah, and then it withdrew, because there were 3,000 people laughing, and everybody laughs in a different way for a different amount of time generally. So I had to actually like stop and wait for the crest of the laugh to kind of taper off. And so that was really strange to me. It was a good problem to have, I guess, to have 3,000 people laughing at you.
Do you think it was easier or harder than 300?
I think the larger the audience, the easier it gets, because the odds that someone in the audience is going to align with your sense of humor go way up. In a smaller crowd, humor is very subjective, and nobody goes, well, I'm not an expert on humor, so I don't know what's funny. Everyone feels that they're an expert on humor, and for themselves they are. And they're literally like, either they think it's funny or they don't think it's funny. So everybody's a comedy expert. So the smaller the crowd, the more challenging it can be to align with their sense of humor. That's, I think, why we make what we do broadly funny in many ways, and that's why the really great performers, they have acts that are largely bulletproof because they've been doing them for so many years. And I'm going to adjust my my on the couch here, but I think that I kind of lost my train of thought there. But yeah, I think it's very much as a comedian, it's a challenge for a smaller crowd rather than a larger crowd, just because you want to. Yeah, and I was saying that everybody's sense of humor is so subjective and so different. And that's why comedians work for years to find their audience, right? Like maybe only 10% of the populace like you. But if you can find that 10%, you can become a huge star because now you're talking millions of people. So it's a small subset of everybody. But if you find your audience, your people, the kind of people who dig what you do, wow, you can, and now you get them on a mailing list and you get them on a YouTube show. You can be a star.
Yeah. What's the best thing that's happened to you on stage, and maybe what's the worst?
Wow. I think the best thing that's happened to me on stage is getting the admiration of my peers. Looking out in the audience and seeing either famous people or people that I know and having them enjoy what I do is tremendously satisfying. Just being a performer is a very satisfying emotional thing because it's a room full of people agreeing with you by their response, by their laughter or their gasps of astonishment or their smiles or the nodding. It's basically they're saying, I believe what you believe, and it's very validating. Worst thing that happened on stage for me was a guy had a heart attack in the middle of the show. I mean, I've actually had things happen where, like, I used to do a trick where I would I'd back up like kind of like I was horrified for a moment as a gag. And one day I kind of like threw my spine out of alignment, and for about 10 seconds I couldn't breathe. And I thought, am I going to have to stop the show? But then I managed to catch the breath, and thank God they were laughing. So I had that time to, right myself, as it were. But I was performing on a cruise ship, and the crowd was about 800 people. It was many years ago. And cruise ships are a microcosm of the world, and things happen that happen in the world. And a guy, an older gentleman, had a heart attack in the middle of the show. About 10 minutes in, someone went, heart attack, heart attack. And then I realized the lights came up and I saw him, and he was, like laid back. And I'm like, so you think, okay, as an entertainer, what do you do? Well, I am the captain of that experience. I'm not the captain of the ship, but I'm the captain of that experience. So I kind of took responsibility, realized I had to be an authority figure. And one of the things which I seldom do is say, ladies and gentlemen, but I did so for the artifice of authority. And I said, oh, ladies and gentlemen, I will let me go off stage. I'm going to check. I'm going to make sure our medical team is on their way. And I went off stage and I go, yeah, they're coming to the showroom. And so the cruise director goes, what do we do? And he's kind of relatively new to the job. And I said, give me a stool. And I went back out on stage and I sat there with the microphone because all people really wanted in that instance was information. They wanted to know what was going on. I said, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know the medical team is on the way. They will be here in just moments. And I know your thoughts and good wishes are with this gentleman. And I just waited with them, because I knew once the medical team arrived and they took him out of the room, every eye would turn to me. And so that's what happened. A few minutes later, the medical team arrived. They put him on the stretcher. They took him out of the room. He was not unconscious, but he was not doing well. But they brought him in, and he didn't need the shock cart in front of anybody, thank goodness. But they rolled him out. And I said, yeah, I said, again, I said, well, I know it's a relief that the medical team came in, and your thoughts and prayers go with him. And let's give our team a round of applause for being so quick to respond. And everybody applauded. Because I didn't want their memory of the show to end with, and heart attack guy possibly dies. We don't know, it ended the show. Yeah. So we had a resolution. The resolution of the story was heart attack guy gets medical attention and will likely recover quickly. And then I said some feeble joke about I had no idea that my humor could have that effect on people. I'll have to rethink what I say. And then I kind of like closed with like this closing story that I do. So that's it. That was kind of the worst moment that I was in on stage. So
That's crazy. Did you ever talk to the person
now,
afterwards?
no, I didn't, because it was a very short cruise, and so it was a 3-4 day cruise. I think it was happened on the 3 day, and then next day we were in port, and so I'm sure he went ashore. Hey, listen, I'm going to take a very like 60-second break. I'm going to get up and leave camera because I'm realizing I'm going to have to eat something, or I'm going to start to get a little shaky, a little issue I have. So let me just leave camera, grab something. I'll come right back.
All right, take your time.
Yeah, it gets really bad if I don't eat. What's your favorite kind of magic?
Stage illusions. I hate that I have to store them, but other than that,
Right.
I'm slowly morphing into more of a classic-ish type of performer, but not really.
Well, that's the evolution that we all go through. Sorry, me just had a little bite of Power Bar there. I think that we all go through an evolution. I mean, where we started, what we thought we were going to do as kids. I mean, for a little while when I was younger, I'm like, oh, I'm going to be an escape artist. But you try things and you find yourself. I had a zigzag and a sub trunk when I was a kid, and did illusions for a little while, and then I'm like, so when I want to do a show, I've got to, get in my van and load the props and get an assistant, and she just had a fight with her boyfriend, and she's in a bad mood, and so funny. I had a funny thing happen. I was performing at the Magic Castle, and I was doing a bit with a levitating mic stand, and I had put a blonde wig head, like a wig head that women put wigs on. And I had jammed that on the top of the mic stand, and I cut a magazine cover of Cosmopolitan. I cut out Claudia Schiffer's face because she was dating Copperfield at the time. And I glued that to the face of the styrofoam head, and then I had a blonde wig. And so the joke was like I was doing a trick with Claudia Schiffer, and so I made the mic stand levitate like a lady levitating in front of me. And then at the end, I pull the wig head off of the mic stand, and I have a throw staff, which is like a wand that you throw, and then it extends, and a banner drops down from it. And I place the wig head on the edge of the banner, and it's supposed to stay there and move down, and then come back, and then turn around. And I went to put it there, because what happens is, it goes. I say, I'm miming this. I'm like, and then it kind of goes to the other end, and I'm like, come on, and it comes back to the middle, and then it turns around, and then I raise the banner, and when I lower it, you see the same blonde wig, or apparently the same blonde wig, and as I lower the banner, I keep going, and it's a woman now, a real woman, and so that woman was off stage. And I cannot look into the wing to see if she's there because that will telegraph. And so I am coming over to secretly get her behind the banner, and she has 1 second to do that. And so I have done the move where she's supposed to be behind the banner, and I can't look and see if she's there because that'll telegraph before she appears. So I take the wig head and I put it on the edge of the banner, expecting her to take it from me with her finger, and she doesn't. And I'm like, that's weird. And I give her another few moments, that's weird. And now I turn and I look, and I see her in the wing of the stage doing this. Because she was having a fight with her boyfriend on her cell phone during the show, and she missed her cue. She missed that 1 second, actually it's like a couple seconds, to get behind a banner to make her appearance. So, illusions! Franz Harari, who I work with a great deal, as a consultant, and he's genius when it comes to illusion. And he said once that being an illusionist is like being a furniture mover with better press. And he's got so many stories about things going wrong. Like he shipped his props to China to perform at a theater that was being built at an outdoor venue, and the theater wasn't finished being assembled, and it was open air at that point, and all his equipment arrived, and they thought, oh, well, we'll do him a favor, we'll set everything up. So they opened all the crates, set up the equipment, and then of course it rained on all the equipment. So I tell him, I said, yeah, he's got so many stories like that. I tell him, you should really write a book called So You Want to Be an Illusionist.
Luckily, I haven't had too many issues moving stuff around, but
yeah.
Last time when I was picking up the trailer full of illusions, the wheel was going to fall off, and we were still like I still had 3 more states to go.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
And somehow we made it overnight, and we decided not to stop.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's getting the equipment there. Mm-hmm. That's what, that's Franz says, he's a mega illusionist. So he's got, he doesn't just have trucks, he has like semis full of equipment.
But he doesn't have to drive them all.
No, that's true. But he did early on in his career. He did. He had his van and he drove them. And that is the thing, it's like, that's what they're really paying for. He's like, I do the show for free. It's getting everything there. They pay me for it.
I kept thinking, I'm going to make an entire act that fits in a suitcase one day. I can't do it.
A lot of magicians would like to do illusions, but just out of necessity, they can't. Like, if you're going to be an illusionist and you're going to transcend your hometown, you've got to get your equipment there. And that means shipping it as cargo or flying it. And so that's a lot of hassle. And I know my act changed because when they changed this thing for the airlines where it was 50 pounds for luggage, where you had to pay extra, and sometimes they charge you like $50, $100 if your baggage was overweight. So I had to like start deciding what I was going to do and downsizing or changing the weight of things so that I wouldn't get charged. So that influenced the act. Levent, who is a remarkable magician, author, photographer, he's like one of the smartest people I know. If you don't know who Levent is, so funny and so skilled and so knowledgeable about magic and its history. And he's done it all. But Levent actually like 3D printed some of the stuff he had in his case, the holders and some of the props and things, just to take some weight out. So sometimes by necessity. My apologies to the viewers for indulging a little bit of power bar, but it's preferable to me passing out on camera. So forgive the chewing, but it allows us to continue the interview.
Going off of what you were talking about earlier with the that impactful moment for the crowd, what is the most impactful moment for you in like best trick that you've seen to now, or a best moment, I guess?
Well, there is what I call the no way moment. And that's that moment that we work to achieve where the audience understands so clearly what must be about to happen and yet is so aware of the impossibility of it happening that they almost involuntarily go, no, or no way. And then the big climax comes. And I've seen people do that with cards and coins and illusions. So it's not dependent upon how big the props or the illusions are. And so I try to get to that no way moment in my act. But I'll tell you a story. I had gotten a gig on a cruise ship with featuring my own show for an hour. And I needed another routine to fill out the time because I was just about 7 minutes short. So I was looking at things to do, and I thought about, Bill and Lemon or Bill and Orange. And I remember when I first came to California many years ago, I'd gone to the Magic Castle, and it's like every single guy was doing Bill and Lemon. And I'm like, that trick again. And so it was so overdone, I never put it in my act. But I knew it was a good piece of magic. So I studied and I created a routine that was original to me, but along the same premise. A borrowed bill ends up inside a piece of fruit. And the first time I performed it for a live audience, and I cut the orange open. As I was cutting, they were going, no way. And then when I separated the halves and they saw the bill there, they're like, what? No way. And it's like, and then suddenly it dawned on me, that's why everyone was doing this trick, because it's a wonderful piece of magic and it's a real impossibility and a stunner to have an object, a borrowed object, appear inside of a piece of fruit. So that really taught me a little bit. But that moment, in that trick and any time in the act, that I can achieve that no way moment, that's really the most satisfying for me.
Going back to when you started in magic to now, is there a trick that used to be overperformed by everyone back then that maybe isn't now?
I think things go through waves of popularity. Right now, one of the most popular ones is the floating table, because it is a genuine miracle. And I know that we're speaking to magicians, but also the public may be watching this, and I don't want to say too much about it, but I'll just say that I believe from the moment that the table lifts off the ground, it's a genuine miracle and should be treated as such. And I don't like to see people treat it like a zombie ball, which, jerks around and lunges and things like that. Because it's not a zombie ball. It's a piece of furniture. So I like to see it treated with the reverence I think it deserves for the miracle that it is. And in my estimation, slower is better than quicker for it, because it makes it look like it's really floating.
Is there a trick that you think is not performed enough now?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Well, there's a lot of mentalism now. And of course, cards are infinitely popular for their variety with card tricks, but I can't really think of a particular trick. I think it's very cool that you are dedicating yourself to doing illusions, because everybody who is doing Zoom shows now is doing either mentalism or some form of close-up or cabaret magic. And so we're not really getting to see a lot of illusions. So I think the entire genre of illusions is underperformed right now. And then when the pandemic ends, we're currently here in November of 2020. So when the pandemic ends, I think then illusions and illusionists will have a resurgence, because people will long to see something larger than their screen.
Yeah. Well, and also if you have to still distance, you need bigger props. In person, maybe that'll be a good thing.
Right. So true.
So when creating, so your persona, is it a extension of you, or is it a different character? How'd you come up with it? What's your take on that?
I just struggled for years to figure out who I was. And I've also done some professional hosting, game show hosting. Wink Martindale hired me to do a pilot for him. Dick Clark hired me to do a TV pilot for him for a game show. And I had that kind of game show style. I had a upbeat nature. I smiled a lot. I was friendly. I had a good voice. I kind of evolved, as every performer does, from when I was a kid to being very dramatic and then trying to be funny, but not in a way that was appropriate to me. When I was a kid, like the big influential entertainers were Steve Martin, Robin Williams, Doug Henning, David Copperfield. So everyone was kind of an amalgam of those people. I mean, nowadays you have your David Blaine's, who really, the whole genre of street magic exploded. When I was younger, you had to explain to people what close-up magic was, or street magic. Now everybody knows what it is. Everybody knows what mentalism is. So I struggled with how big to be, because I was influenced by Steve Martin a lot. And I guess today people who might have been influenced by Jim Carrey, especially at the height of his popularity. So I had a habit of being kind of big with my humor. And then as I matured, I learned to pull it back and be more subtle, and to use it more effectively, so it wasn't like a constant thing. I used it at the moments that it worked for me. and I have a certain physicality about me. So I come out, and usually I'm very well groomed and very well dressed, and sometimes vest, bow tie, suit, that kind of thing. So I have an air of authority, and then my humor runs as a juxtaposition of that because I'm so playful and fun and a little bit over the top at times, but in a self-mocking way, so it shows I have an awareness of it. I think you probably heard people say, oh, that guy is on all the time. Like even when he's off stage, he's on stage. And that kind of big persona that just doesn't stop, and it's like after a while it's not engaging, and it's like you've had enough of it. So by maturing a bit and realizing that it was better to be authentic rather than being a character all the time, I was able to find a way to modulate what I was doing with how big and then how real I was. And I always kind of skate that between being big and being real, big in a comedic sense. And so it's finally worked out for me. And someone paid me a compliment at the Magic Castle after my show in the Palace. They said, you know, I've been watching you off and on for years, and you're just more like yourself than you've ever been before. And it kind of was a revelation for me, because that's kind of what I was trying to do. I was trying to be more like myself. So my on-stage persona is a heightened version of who I am. It's not a complete departure. It's not a complete character. I've dabbled with that a little bit. I still may dabble with it. I would like to do a mentalist character. That is a big departure from me, so that you wonder, does this guy really have powers? But humor seems like no matter what I do, humor always finds its way back into it. I was a touring stand-up comedian for 10 years, so I invested a lot of myself into humor and performing comedy. And so I try to bring that immediacy of stand-up to my comedy magic, because magic is often so plot heavy. So it takes a long time before something finally happens, right? But comedy is a laugh every 15 seconds. So I try to imbue the magic that I do with that kind of velocity where there's something interesting happening. I mean, on my show, Engage, Pro Tips for Performers and Presenters on Facebook, I like to say that an audience is only ever in two states. They're either actively engaged and connected to the performer and the proceedings, or they're disconnected and waiting for something to happen. And then the trick is to never make them wait. And so we explore ways to do that and keep the engagement consistent throughout the entire act. And we live in a day when people can hold an entire universe of possibility and interest in their hands. And everyone is about 10 seconds away from checking their phone. So you better be more interesting and more engaging than this universe that they hold in the palm of their hand.
So for your character specifically, when creating a new act, do you think it's more important to focus just on the comedy, or do you think, how can I make this skillful and amaze versus entertain?
Well, the bottom line is, no matter what you do, whether you're a serious or a comedic entertainer, it all has to be engaging and entertaining. Humor is a way to take something that might be very straightforward and then add many different levels to it. Two magicians could do the same trick with completely different presentations, one very serious, one very comedic. So I think the most important thing is that the journey has to be worth it. Whatever you're doing, when you get to the end of it, it has to be worth it. One of the tricks that I became very well known for, although I do less of it now, is something I called the amazing psychic toaster. And there was a magician many years ago named Chris Carey, and I had just started doing like stand-up and comedy magic together. And he said, oh, you should do something like a psychic toaster. And I just kind of ran with that idea. And so basically someone selects a card from a Ziploc bag full of cards. So that's how a comedian would have them pick a card, right? He wouldn't do card flourishes. They'd be in a Ziploc bag. So I was presenting myself as a comedian doing a magic trick, not a magician trying to be funny. Yeah. And they pick a card out of a Ziploc bag. I introduce several slices of bread. They pick one. We put it in the toaster. We start the toaster. I take a kitchen fork and grab their hand, and I basically electrocute us with the fork, sparks fly, and then the toast starts to smoke, and then I pop the bread up, and then I say, what was your card? And they say whatever it is, 5 of diamonds, whatever, and then I turn the card around and it has a 5 and a diamond singed into it. That routine grew to be about 10 minutes long in comedy clubs, and it was my encore piece. And it was so imbued with humor because I had worked on it for so long and found so many moments of humor throughout it, that by the time I got to the end, even if the trick didn't work, it was still wildly entertaining. And I know this because one time it didn't. I think whatever card they picked, I had the wrong card. 3 of diamonds, and then they had some other different card. And I go, 3 of diamonds, and that is really close. And they just thought it was hysterical. Magician in trouble, that can be a really funny thing. So the journey has to be as entertaining, or has to be entertaining, that leads to the climax. It can't just be plot, 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 climax. So that was kind of a lesson for me to kind of imbue everything with humor. And now, when people with the keto diets and all the diets and whatever, I always have little asides, and I take the bread out. It's just plain white bread I'm using. And I would say Atkins diet was, a no-carb diet that was very popular. And I'm like, by the way, for those of you on the Atkins diet, this is bread. Sorry to frighten you. And that was funny. And then when it became keto and when it became gluten, everyone was like gluten intolerant, I would pick up the bread and I go, I apologize, this trick is not gluten-free. And, so you got to update your humor for the times if you are working as a contemporary style performer. So, the joke didn't go away, it just got transformed based on what is popular. And I have my phone on silent. And I'm not checking my phone in the middle of the interview, which would be horrible. Yeah, hang on a minute. Checking my stocks. Instagram. No, actually, I'm expecting a delivery. Yeah. And I just want to make sure I don't miss it. So.
I was going to say, you look pretty bored of your own story there. How many times you told it? No.
This is such a strange interview. I'm eating. I never would eat on camera, but I'm eating in the middle of an interview because if I didn't, I was going to pass out, and that wouldn't have been fun for the audience. Or maybe it would. Maybe that would have been hysterical. Yes, here he is in his last interview ever. So I don't want to become famous for that.
No, that'd be rough. Which, by the way, the Toaster Act, that was on Penn and Teller's show.
Yeah.
And the first season, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll link that down below if anyone wants to see it. It's great.
Yeah, it's funny. You learn lessons, and one of them is who you pick to help you out on stage. And so I looked over the audience, and I had my choice of, I could have chosen anybody, but I had narrowed it down to 3 different people I might choose to help me with that trick. And the 2 people that were suggested to me were, one of them was very busty and wearing something kind of sheer and very pretty, but I felt like it would look like I was trying to get over with her, or I picked her because she was so busty or something, or I picked her because I was so attracted to her. So I wanted to try to avoid that. So there was an Asian gal in the audience, and she had a flower in her hair and beautiful lipstick, and she looked really happy to be there. And I go, oh, she'll be good. And then I do this thing in the middle of the trick where I go, there are snakes under there. I don't know if that made it into the cut, but yeah. But I thought, oh, she might react frightened, and it might be really funny. And it's all just a gag anyway. And then I ended up being the last person to perform that day. And the audience had been in the audience for 4 or 5 hours. And so by the time it came my turn, the flower was gone, the hair was down, the lipstick was off. She had had enough. She was ready to go home. And then I picked her. So she didn't react. She was much more self-contained and and demure and quiet than I thought she might be. I thought she might be playful because she had such a big smile when I saw her. So,
She was probably
yeah,
falling
who you
asleep.
pick. Who you pick makes a big difference. And for me, there was like a couple really funny things I didn't get to do because her reaction wasn't what I expected. But in the general sense, it turned out to be a really good spot, and the audience was really amused by her, and the trick went well. It's just that having done it thousands of times, I know how good it can go, and I'm so greedy about the laughs, right? Like I know where all the best laughs are, and anytime I have to give one up, I'm like, but that's just me being a performer and being self-critical. I don't want to give up any laughs, but certain things in order to be funny have to be inspired naturally, right? So like sometimes I do a thing, I do it in this routine as well, where I've given her the fork and I turn around and I bend down low. And so my butt's kind of towards her. And then I go, and I like, as if she was going to poke me in the butt with the fork. And I go, no need to tenderize Mr. Magic, but sometimes if they're playful, they actually will go like this playfully, like they're indicating to the audience, oh, I should poke them in the butt. They never do, and so that's very funny. And then when I turn around and they're like, how did he know? Well, because I do that every time. And if they do this, it's even funnier. But me assuming that she's going to do that is still funny. So I just want all the laughs I can get.
So, as an amateur, what's something that...
What? Why? How dare you call me an amateur? No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think you've gone a little past that now. What's something you did as an amateur that you would never do now? Was there any hard habits to break?
Yes. There's kind of a style of humor that was very popular when I was starting to do stand-up comedy, where you were being very abrasive with people in the audience. Hey, nice shirt. That whatever. You're just like you're trying to mine humor by making fun of the people in the crowd. And as a young, brash guy, I may have done that. I may have found humor at the expense of other people's egos, and I just don't want to do that anymore. I want everybody, the whole idea is I want people to be part of the fun. I don't make fun of them. I want them to be part of the fun. Because yes, I could make fun of them. And if I am playful and teasing like a sibling might be, that's one thing. But I will never intentionally do something that diminishes someone or genuinely takes a laugh at their expense. I just want the experience for them to be joyful and playful and not have jeopardy or risk in it for them.
Is there any advice that you would give to someone that is wanting to be a full-time magician? And also, is there something you were told that was bad advice that they should...
Okay, one sec. Hang on to that question.
The delivery's here.
Right, so let's pause. Okay, so you had a question for me.
Yes. What is some advice you would give someone starting out that wants to be a full-time magician? And was there anything that you were told that was bad advice?
Oh, wow. It's like people are like, oh, what's the best piece of advice anybody ever gave you? But nobody usually asks what's the worst piece of advice. Make your hair blonde. That was a bad piece of advice.
I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like knowing what not to do is more important than knowing what
Right.
to do, because you'll figure it out.
Right. I'm probably, as I continue with this or another question, something will pop into my head. But best piece of advice I ever got was years ago when I was just starting out in magic. There was a show called Presto, and it was a theater show, magic show that was fronted by a gentleman named Ab Dixon, and it toured around the country and had a really cool poster, and it was an illusion show in a very classic sense, some of the classic illusions. And I had seen him perform at a magician's convention, And I asked him, if he had any advice for me, because at that point I wanted to be an illusionist as well. And he said, when you perform, show that you are enjoying yourself and you enjoy what you do, because that more than anything will carry across the footlights. And I thought, oh, that's very interesting. That the audience should perceive that you're enjoying what you're doing, and then they will enjoy it. We have these mirror neurons in our brain that make us experience other people's emotions. That's why when you go to a movie and the girl is being pursued by the monster and the monster jumps out and the girl on screen, recoils, you in your theater seat may go like that, because you have these mirror neurons that allow you to feel what other people are feeling. So yes, if you're experiencing joy, to some degree, so will they. I smile a lot. It is very calculated at times, because sometimes I am trying to be sly, and the smile tells them that I'm being amusing or playfully sarcastic. Or if something goes wrong on stage, my big, on the Engage show, my gold nugget, if you will, that I say about that is, you should never, the nugget is never angry, always amused. So when things go wrong, you have to remain calm. Never angry, always amused. Because if you show that you are discontent or upset, that will telegraph to the audience. They will see it. They will experience disappointment or discontent. Remain calm so that you can think of something, a way to handle the situation. And quite often, just smiling and being amused by the problem, or acknowledging the reality of the situation, because what's happened cannot be ignored, well, the smile can be a very powerful thing, and it's a great way to connect with people. And you yawn, other people yawn. You smile, other people smile. So that's my nugget for you.
Have you ever used animals in your show?
Had some parakeets that never made it into the act. I did some dove magic with borrowed doves, and my neighbor had a rabbit that I used in a few shows, but I was not really a performer who used animals in the show, although what a tremendous appeal they have. Quite often, I just did an episode of the show, and I said, more than performers, we're in the service industry. And the service we're providing is the benefit of our performance. So it's the state that we put people in. It's the laughter that we generate. It is the guests of the party enjoying themselves. And the whole idea was to be less performer-centric and more client-centric, meaning focus less on yourself, focus more on the audience. And when you're marketing, that means sell the benefit of your services, not the features. But one thing I will say is that if let's say you're doing birthday parties, and the birthday party mom's primary concern is, do you have a rabbit? Well, then if you have a rabbit, you are meeting her expectations, right? Yeah. She doesn't want to hear about, oh, I have a sound system and I have great lighting and I come in and I set up early. That may not be important to her. Maybe she wants to know, do you have a rabbit? Will the kids have fun? And will you make my child a star? And that might be all they need to know. You're selling the benefit of your services, not the features. So, little tip there.
If you're an unknown magician, is it better to take... I know there was no transition there at all. If you're not as well known, is it better to sell your creations that you've made in magic, or is it better to keep them for your own act?
I don't quite know how to answer that one, because it's about being a creator who sells something rather than just being a creator, in a sense. Yeah. I would say, when you create something, if you can perform it, do that, because it's a voyage of discovery that you're going to make about it. And so much so than if you just create it and hope that audiences will be pleased with it. You might make a discovery and performance that will completely change an element of it that will make it that much better. But I will talk to you about originality. And originality is important but it depends on at what level you're playing the game, right? Because if you are a guy who just wants to be the best birthday party magician in your town, then like I said, that may be what the mom wants to know. Do you have a rabbit? You have a rabbit, you're a hit. As you move up the ladder, so to speak, and go wider with your talents, now let's say you want to be a corporate guy who flies around the country. Okay, well now that's a very different set of concerns and issues that your buyer would have. And so they'll want to know, are you clean, and are you really dependable, and will my people find you funny, you know? And you're also going to be seen in a more critical eye, because rather than just the birthday mom having to make the decision, there might be 3 people who you get bumped up to successively that have to make that decision. And you need to empower those people in a way to tell your story for you. So when they go tell their boss, yeah, we like this guy, here's his website, and you know, he seems really funny. You want to give them something to say or something to show so they can show the decision maker. Now but one of their concerns may not be, is he original, right? Now you transcend that and you want to go have your own show in Vegas. Well, how are you going to stand out from all of the other hundreds of offerings there in Las Vegas? You need something about you and your show that is special, unique, and different. And now being original, either in your character or in your creations, is very important. And then let's say you want to be on television. Now being original and creative is even more important. So there's no one right answer. It just depends on what level you want to play, because you can't sell originality in an arena where it is not prized. Some of the cruise ships years ago, there were guys who were doing pretty much the same act. They were all opening with the bowling ball and closing with the snowstorm. And, you know, after a while, because I was working as a stand-up, I got to work with all the magicians. And after a while, the guys who worked the tech were just like, so does everybody do the same act? You know, and they were right in a sense. But at that time, originality was not prized. They just wanted to know, could you present a really solid show? And those are very solid tricks. And that's why everybody was doing them. And many people still do. They are excellent pieces of magic. But now that the industry has matured and the ships are bigger than ever, and their theaters rival anything on Broadway for size and technical capability, now they want to see people who can transcend these kinds of things and do something special, unique, and different, because the people who cruise often do it more than once, and they've seen other magicians. So
that was a good answer, actually.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, we're 1 for 1.
Yeah,
I mean, we're 1 for
you got
20.
one now. So have you ever had your act stolen, physical props, or mentally?
I've had people lift lines and bits from my act, and that's just the danger of performing for other performers, you know.
Yeah.
But hopefully no one will do them as well as you do them, or they won't fit them as well. I've had people come up and tell me, oh, like after a show at the Magic Castle, they were like coming up to share how excited they were that, you know, they did my lines in the one routine that I do. They did the same lines and they worked really well, as if I would be like, awesome, high five. And because I try to create things, or I take tricks that are done by other people, but I try to find a way to do them that is, the presentation of them is very much my own. It can take so long to carve those things out of the stone, to chisel them out of the stone, and then finally you get it there. And it's such a process of trial and error and trial again. And then somebody sees the finished product and then takes it and presents it. It does feel like they're robbing you in some way. I've gotten less offended by it than I used to be, but it still incenses me just a little bit sometimes when people are so bold about lifting not just lines, but, you know, like complete chunks of stuff, or bits that happen spontaneous to me one night and I kept it in the show and I crafted it, and then they take that. It's like they're pulling the fruit off my tree. My tree will grow more fruit, but they're still pulling the fruit off the tree.
And what's sad is they don't realize it. I mean, like, they think they're doing almost a good thing. And
And this goes back to what I said before about kids watching YouTube and doing things in exactly the way they've seen them done. I did that too when I was a kid. You try on many coats until you find one that fits. But eventually you've got to try to stitch something together yourself and make something that's really you, that's really made for you and can only be worn for you in a way that you wear it. And so I understand that. And I understand that there's so much of magic where you can buy complete routines and perform them word for word. And then you see people do that and you notice that maybe you see 10 people do the same routine and you go, but this guy and that guy do them better than the other 8. And this guy does them the best. And that really shows that who you are as a performer counts. It's not just the trick itself. And I always encourage to take the focus off yourself. Focus on the audience and the experience that you're providing for them. How engaged are they? What is their experience of what you're doing, instead of worrying about how do I look, how do I sound, how am I going over? Turn it around. What are they experiencing? What are they feeling? What are they thinking? How engaged are they? How entertained are they?
Just take a side turn here. What would be the hardest trick you've ever had to learn, and what is the hardest trick you've ever had to perform?
One of the hardest tricks I ever learned was the linking coat hangers, and it's a take on the classic Chinese linking rings. So as a comedy performer, it was a great juxtaposition because you could create an expectation and then explode it. And you talk about the Chinese linking rings and then you pull out hangers. And then, of course, the commonality and connection on that trick is everybody's taken hangers out of the closet and had them all jumbled up and tangled up. And so it's so perfect. And so Mike Caveney was the creator of that trick. And I have put countless hours into making that trick my own and perfecting it. And I actually ended up taking some of the moves out and making the routine a little quicker. So I didn't do everything I could possibly do with the routine. I did what I thought were the highlights, and I did it only out of necessity when I was told, when I was in an ensemble magic show, this multi-million-dollar production that was on Norwegian Caribbean Lines called the Illusionarium. I had taken over one of the leading roles, and I did this as part of it. It was a theater piece, so there was acting and there was magic as well. And so I did this piece, and the director said, okay, you got to cut it. And then I cut a little. She goes, no, it's got to be 2 minutes. And I go, but it's 4 minutes. She goes, no, it's got to be 2 minutes or it's out. And at first I was very, resistant, right? No, but when you see it in front of a crowd, it's really fun. No, it's got to be 2 minutes or it's out. And so when I finally gave up my resistance and embraced the challenge, I found a way to skip some moves in the middle. Because I was like, you can't just skip ahead. There's a sequence of moves that you need to do to get from A to B. Well, I finally let go of all that, looked at the routine with a fresh eye, said, I can take this out. And because there was less there, it forced me to focus more intently on what remained. And because I did that, I found moments that I never knew were there, because I was intently focused on where does the magic happen? When does the magic happen? When is the magic moment? And when I used to unlink things down here, I changed it and I now did it up here right in front of my face. And I did it half the speed I used to do it, and it got a much bigger reaction. So I ended up getting more laughs and more gasps in 2 minutes than I used to get in 4 minutes, because I had focused so intently on what remained. And it was a very difficult trick to learn because I didn't have a video all those many years ago, and I'm talking 30 years ago when I got the trick. I had a booklet, and one of the photographs in the booklet was wrong. It was like reversed or something. And so that was a very difficult routine for me to learn.
So when you have a routine that you've performed over and over, do you have any tricks to keep it fresh?
Yeah, you have to stay in the moment of what you're doing. I always tell people, the trick is to speak conversationally, not presentationally. Because in a presentation, you're just reciting your lines, your script, your dialogue. In a conversation, you're saying something, they're saying something. And what you're doing is in some way tempered or changed by what their response is. So you have to be awake, alive, and aware and in the moment and be changed by what is happening. As a comedian, when people laugh a lot, where we call roll the laugh, the laughter rolls, meaning it gets a laugh and then the laughter rolls a little extra because that particular crowd is so good or so amused that night. Now you have a few extra moments there while they're laughing. Well, do you stand still, motionless? No. I will get eye contact with them and kind of nod or smile, and it's my nonverbal way of saying, right? I know, right? It's getting that connection and that community with them, that you think what I think, we both get it, kind of a thing. And then if they laugh, you have an opportunity to do little taglines on top of the laugh. But when it's a small audience or a very tired audience or a very drunk audience, I know I don't have time to do the taglines for every piece that I'm saying because they don't have the attention span or they're not good laughers because they're really tired. So they're enjoying the show, but they're not very vocal. So I have to be judicious and say I need to tighten things up. I need to take some of the tags out. So the show's still funny, but it's not, if the lines you're saying are not making the show better, only longer, they gotta go. So I'm affected by the audience. I'm not just reciting it the way I do it, the same way I do it, no matter what their response is. So think of it as a conversation. It's an exchange of energy rather than a presentation, which is all you, saying what you say. Some people wouldn't change a single beat or any of their timing, whether they got a laugh or not. And I'm not saying that that's always necessary. Sometimes you need to take those pauses to train them that's where the laugh's supposed to go. But you have to always address the reality of the situation. Too often people try to ignore something that's taking place. And the audience is like, is he going to acknowledge that's happening? You've got to address the reality of the situation. So that's my very long answer. And the basic thing is, yes, stay in the moment.
Well said. Did you have a mentorship?
When I started, there was a guy by the name of Barry Gibbs, and not related to the Gibbs singers, not related to the Brothers Gibb, which is showing my age, I know. But Barry had worked at the Magic Fun Wagon, the kiosk in the mall, and then he went on to open his own magic shop. And, people who own magic shops, they become your mentors willingly or unwillingly, because if you're an interested kid, you're just spending so much time in their shop, and then they'll give you these little insights and these little directions of, what to do and how to do it. But I think I've learned from everybody. I've learned from the good performers and the bad performers. And when I started out, as I said, there was not the internet and I couldn't see magic shows all the time. Every day now you can watch a magic show online, or several of them, or 100 different tricks you can watch. You can watch magic specials from 40 years ago, or something that happened this year. So there's such a wealth of material out there. I think that, like I said, the vocabulary of what people know is very different now.
All right. Who would be maybe the 3 people that you learned the most from?
Wow, that's a good question. I think, initially, like everyone else from my era, I was influenced very heavily by David Copperfield and by Steve Martin. Robin Williams as well, but they kind of adjusted my comedic sensibility and my sensibility about what magic was. Doug Henning changed magic in his way because he made it kind of that rainbows and flowers and feelings and wonder, right? And I don't mean to be mocking when I say that. It was a wonderful thing in its era, and is. And then David Copperfield came along and brought a sense of reality to what he did by framing things in a theatrical context, where the magician did magic to solve a problem, to romance the girl, to make the kid closer to his father, to whatever. So he was really, in his era, which is still going on, he strives to do it as good as anyone can ever do it. Whenever you see him do a trick, it's usually the penultimate version of that particular trick because he invests so much of his time and expense into getting it right. I learned from everybody that I worked with and came in contact with, and I'm grateful to people who took the time to step out of the general answers they give people and work with me on something particular. I would say that one thing that I learned to do as I got older, when I wasn't such a brash young man, is to express gratitude and to really appreciate and be thankful for the time and the ideas that people share with me. Because before, I was just kind of a mindset like, hey, I'm a young guy trying to do this thing. Of course everyone wants to help me. And then you get older and you realize, oh, these people are giving of themselves, of their time and talents to help me. And so it's a good rule of thumb to live life by, and that is, express your gratitude for people who help you.
On that note, I just want to say, I do appreciate you joining me. And
yeah. Well, thank you. And like Losander had come to the Magic Castle, and he was the creator of this table trick. And he took the time to work with me on it. And so I really appreciated that. Don Wayne, who created this trick where a mic stand floats, I brought my own presentation to it. And then I actually changed a little bit of the methodology. And I was deeply gratified that he adopted that particular change.
That's cool.
For all of the subsequent pieces of equipment that he sold. So it's like one of these things where kind of like I feel like I'm on the Oscars, and then I know I'm going to forget to thank people. But I'll just say that the list of people to thank are long. And I'm especially grateful for people who are my dear friends, like Jonathan Levitt and Dave Cox and John Armstrong and Michael Gutenplan. And gosh, I can go on and on. But these are people whom I talk to, Christopher Hart, Franz Harari. I talk to them on a regular, semi-regular basis. And they kind of keep me honest in a sense, and they help grease the wheels of creativity for me.
All right. If you had an unlimited budget in your show, what would be the first thing you would do to improve it?
Why? What have you heard? No. Wow. If I had an unlimited budget, what would be the first thing I would do to improve it? I would probably spend money on the marketing aspect of what I do, in the graphic design and the demo element of what I do. I would up my production value. I might hire a director of some renown, and I might pursue a couple theater pieces that I have kind of had in my mind or on the back burner for many years. Every decade or so, magic takes this transformation. It went from being Doug Henning and David Copperfield to being David Blaine. And David Blaine brought such a different sensibility to it, an urban, gritty, real on the street kind of feel. And he then transitioned from that into being this guy who pushes the limits of human endurance in a way similar to what Houdini did. So he's continued to make himself an icon. Justin Willman is a tremendous performer, and he makes magic cool in an everyman kind of way. He really kind of eschewed and steered away from the white shirts and black jeans of David Copperfield and the suits and ties of my contemporaries. And he was just a guy in a t-shirt and jeans or, whatever, and super likable and super charming and charismatic and doing magic like a normal guy instead of the imperiousness or artifice of I am a magician. He was so real and likable. And then now he strives to make his magic about something on his show Magic for Humans. So yeah, I think especially in the age of virtual entertainment, that I'd probably spend the money on increasing the technical aspect and the promotional aspect of what I do, as well as embracing a project maybe I couldn't afford to invest the time in because I was doing so many other things. David, I'll say one more thing about the theatrical side of it, and that is if you have not yet seen Derek Delgadio in and of itself, it's finally coming out on Hulu in January of 2020. And it is a show not to be missed because it really shows the potential of what magic can do if it's used as a mechanism to create or convey a big idea. Tricks can be small, but ideas can be gigantic. And this one is about identity. And you will be moved, you will laugh, you may cry, but it is a magic show unlike any else. And it's almost a misnomer to call it a magic show. It is a theater piece that has magic in it. Again, it's like the difference between trying to be a magician who's funny or a comedian who does magic. And in his case, it's a theatrical presentation that does magic, not magic that's trying to be a theatrical presentation. And it's so moving and it's so much about something. So I highly recommend seeing that just to show you what the potential for magic as an art form can be.
So when starting out, what's the most important thing you think people should focus on?
The comedian in me wants to know, make sure you wear colorful socks. The most important thing to focus on when you are starting out is to ask yourself two questions. One, what is the big idea or the climax of the effect that I am doing for the people? And what is their experience of what that is? How is it being perceived by them? Part of being a really good performer is being a curator of your own material. And there's so much out there. It's so overwhelming to have to choose things that just choosing the proper effects that you're going to do in your show can be highly challenging. So you want to look at it as a whole and say, well, what is this trick about? What kind of a trick it is? You don't want a trick that's basically, like a torn and restored by a cut and restored by a cutting in half. You have to have variety in it. But the pillars of the fine arts, rhythm, color, harmony, variety. There's rhythm, color, harmony, variety.
And number 5.
God, I'll think of it. Normally I used to be able to rattle them off, but I need one more cup of coffee. But, consider the experience for the audience beyond the tricks themselves, right? And so that means, how am I doing what I do? How do I look? How do I sound? In the beginning, when you're starting out, that's a very formative thing. We're so focused on ourselves. We're so performer-centric. How do I look? How do I sound? How is this going? But, learn the effects that you're doing well enough so that you can be in the moment when you're performing them. I think that's probably the biggest note I can give people, is to be in the moment with what you do. So initially when you're starting out and you're learning an effect or putting a show together, it's just natural to be focused on yourself. But when you get to be proficient, you really want to flip that focus around and make it the experience of the audience and realize that there's so much more to it than the climax of the trick. When I say what is the climax of the trick, I think what I'm trying to impart is are all of them very, very, very similar, or is there variety? Ha ha! That's one of the other pillars. Variety. I knew I'd think it. Did I say that? Go back and check. So that's really important. And the other thing I'll say is, unless you're doing it for a purposeful sense of being authoritative or as a character to ladies and gentlemen, right? Or as a character, stop saying ladies and gentlemen. As performers, our job is to always engage them more deeply and more strongly and find more connection and pull them in closer. And when you say ladies and gentlemen, you're placing a theatrical distance between yourself and the audience. You're literally treating them as a group of people instead of individuals. And you see this all the time in videos online. It's so common for people to go, hey guys in a video is the equivalent of ladies and gentlemen on stage. They are not ladies and gentlemen. They are a group of individuals who have come together for a shared experience that you are the leader of. So I don't say, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I say, good evening. I don't need to say, ladies and gentlemen. They're individuals. The idea is they should feel I am talking to them, not at them, that I am in the moment, not reciting the lines that I do. And ladies and gentlemen sounds very much like reciting lines that you do. When online, I don't say, hey guys, I go, hey, welcome. There's no need to place that metaphoric distance between you and the audience when your job is to always draw them closer. That's the kind of stuff I'll say, you know, if you haven't checked out the Engage show on Facebook, look that up. It's Engage, Pro Tips for Performers, and that little ampersand, and presenters. It's free, it's on Facebook, and there's a lot of valuable information there. I just did an interview with Jonah Babbins about marketing your virtual show, but I have a lot of tips for engaging, and also I do private coaching, and my thanks to Tom Pichet, who is a fantastic performer, and I've gotten to work with him and many people over the years as both a consultant and as a coach. So I am doing that now, but you'll find out all about that and more about that on the Engage page, and there's a little 2.5-minute My Career in Review. So if you were wondering, why should we listen to this guy? Well, you can watch that video and it'll give you some idea how I came about the ideas that I have.
And I'll link that in the description below.
Yeah, hey, thanks very much. And it was fun being on the show with you here. My very first experience being surrounded by flying green
frowns.
Yeah. And this was, I will say that this was one of the most pleasant interrogations I've ever endured.
I kind of want to know how many others you've had, but anyway.
Why? What have you heard? Well, let's wrap up with like one more of your most intriguing questions. The question that you never think to ask people that you're thinking of now. A question perfectly tailored for Bruce Gold. Now, that's pressure, right?
Yeah, you're really building this one up now.
I better have a damn good answer.
Well, there's also the lightning round thing.
Uh-oh. No one told me about the lightning round.
Yeah, there's a rapid fire.
Let me check my receipt here.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did you even read the question? No.
No, I don't even know. Lightning round. Oh my God. Oh, okay, I'm ready. Okay.
Very simple.
Let me just say that of all the things that you might ask me to do, I will probably suck the worst at this, because the lightning round, if I'm correct, is about quick answers to favorites. And I'm a horrible person for favorites because I always want to think, like, it's like I want to be so fair to all the options. I don't want to besmirch an option that I should have said, and later I'll go, oh, why did I say that? This is really my favorite. I guess, I don't know. I guess it's my indecisiveness to some degree. But I will subject myself if that is what is necessary to bring this show to a close.
Yes, he'll do anything to leave me here. All right, so with that being said, here's the final segment. I'm going to ask you lightning quick questions to get to know you better as a human being. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. What's your favorite color?
Teal.
Favorite cereal?
Honey Nut Cheerios.
Do you consider cereal to just be cold soup?
I do not, and I sometimes put coffee in my cereal.
Okay. Favorite band?
Cold coffee. Cold coffee.
Okay. What's your favorite band?
My favorite band. Oh, this is one of those. I'm gonna say Coldplay for lack of a better answer, because I was just listening to some of their songs.
All right. Apple or Android?
Apple, 100%. If you're a person who cares about design, Apple. I know Android, very functional, good price point, but for me, for decades, Apple.
All right, pineapple. Now, does pineapple belong on pizza?
What was that?
I just butchered that. Does pineapple belong on pizza? It's a very important question. The internet needs to know.
Pineapple deserves to be on pizza when you are in Hawaii. But do not ask a pizza delivery person to show up with both a pepperoni pizza and a Hawaiian pizza, because the aroma of the two cancel each other out. There, I've said it.
All right, and finally, what is your pet peeve in magic?
Well, it's what I mentioned before when people say ladies and gentlemen, because it is just such a cop-out of not being in the moment and reciting whatever the script is and saying it because that's the thing you think people are supposed to say. Here's my other big pet peeve. Why did you say that? Like when you say, name a card, 4 of clubs. Why did you choose the 4 clubs? Well, the honest answer is because you put me on the spot, and I said, name a number. 17? Is there any reason why you chose 17? Those are weak options. Weak. Because it puts people on the spot, it makes them uncomfortable. Nobody has a good answer for that. What's your favorite card? Nobody but a gambler has a favorite card, or someone who's superstitious. Stop asking those questions. Instead, find interest in the answers that they give. So, TravisTy, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to name a playing card. Now, let me let you behind the scenes for a moment. I will tell you in all honesty that when people are asked to name a card, a lot of people name generally the same 4 or 5 cards. And you strike me as someone who is a unique individualist, someone who is a rugged individualist, someone who doesn't do things the way other people do them. So I know when I ask you to name a card in a moment, you're going to name a card that is uncommon, right? And now, we didn't discuss this, and I certainly didn't tell you in advance that you would be asked to name an uncommon card. But right now, you're probably conjuring one up in your head, an uncommon card that you don't think everybody else names. So now we're all very interested to know what this uncommon card is. So tell me, what is that card?
5 of clubs.
5 of clubs. Interesting. You chose an odd card as opposed to an even card. I wonder if that gives us any kind of insight into your personality. You also chose a card that could be counted on one hand. 5. Maybe you're a very tactile person. Okay. Do you see what I did there? I made the experience meaningful to you. I made it immediate, and I pre-framed you for the answer so that by the time I got to the part where you had to say the card, you were super comfortable with the card you were going to say, because I didn't put you on the spot by going, what's your favorite card? Because everybody goes, oh. Make that a mental note. Anytime you see an audience member doing this, they're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Don't put them on the spot like that. Pre-frame them for the answer that you want. So if you go back and watch it, you'll see that I gave you ample opportunity and I led you almost by the hand gently into what I wanted you to say, so that when the moment came for you to say it, you would feel confident and you would feel right about your answer. And then I didn't, why did you name that card? No, I suggested why you named that card, because it was odd, because 5, these are things I've never said. Well, I say odd or even sometimes, but 5, you're the first person I've had who said 5. So I had my hand up and I realized, oh, that's 5 fingers, or 4 fingers and a thumb if you're picky, right? And so I said, oh, maybe you can count it on one hand. Maybe you're a very tactile person. You're revealing something about them. And never forget, your show is not about you. It's all about them.
Well said. And to,
mic drop. Okay.
to sum up basically what you just said, this is why you hate lightning rounds. I got it. You have no idea what's coming. Well, Bruce, it's been great. Is there anything before we end that you would like to say to the people at home? Watch it here.
Hey, yeah, I really would. I did that show called The Bruce Gold Show, which I was really quite proud of. It's like a low-budget Tonight Show, and I think that viewers will be very interested, and of course, I should say, I think you will be very interested, speaking directly to the viewers, in the show because I usually have a magician or a variety artist as one of my two guests on every episode. And there have been some super great people on, big names that you know. And so check that out on Facebook. Search for The Bruce Gold Show. And then you've been kind enough to add a link for Engage, that page. So check that out. Check the episodes out there. If you're interested in coaching, you can message me through that and we'll set up a Zoom call. We'll chat for 10, 15 minutes just to see if coaching is right for you and what you want to accomplish. And otherwise, you can like me on Facebook. But I don't actually have a real fan page because I'm an old guy and I started a long time ago with Facebook, and I'm finally going to transfer things over to a fan page at some point. But yeah, so that's the last thing I need to say, other than thanks for having me on.
All right. Thanks for being on. Thanks for being interrogated.
All right, cheers.
All right. Hey, thanks for watching, and thanks for Bruce for wasting his time with me. And if you all want to waste some more time with me, these will be dropping every week. And if you want to see more, subscribe, like, comment, do what you got to do. We'll be here. See you on the next one.
Follow the official TravisTy at Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or email him at theofficialtravesty@gmail.com.
Like, comment, and subscribe, or else.
My name is Bruce Gold, and I have been interrogated. Eyebrow for effect.